And then our fourth segment of nonprofits for the week, get your praying shoes on and make sure God touches you. Eli, fill us in on school superintendent Gray Burton, who cannot get enough of Jesus.
Well, in contrast to everything they've ever done, the Freedom from Religion Foundation has written 3 letters to Rusk Independent School District since September, demanding that they stop allowing students to pray. Except no, they didn't. Rusk ISD Superintendent Gray Burton started replacing ceremonial moments of silence with student-led prayers, which is, of course, not allowed. Why else would they do it? The list of events that FFRF has responded to includes a prayer read over the loudspeaker before the homecoming football game, an invocational prayer read by a student selected by administrators, and a post on the district's Facebook page encouraging and favoring Christians to apply. Gray Burton, who insists that he knows the law and how to operate within it, seems to have no idea what at least some of those words mean, as he seems to not know the law or how to operate within it. Let's talk about the details. This story is from The Friendly Atheist by Hemant Mehta on July 24th, 2024.
All right. Well, let me ask you a quick question about your intro. What's wrong with Burton promoting the ISD as a good Christian place to work? I know a lot of people find that positive, and that doesn't even talk about the surrounding area being his way. Why shouldn't he promote that as a selling point?
Yes, great question. So he essentially, the Facebook post is saying, apply here. This is the environment that we have, and it says good Christian faith-based values, something along those lines. And the FFRF tells him, you cannot encourage or favor, specifically favor. It is illegal to favor applicants of a specific religion or no religion. Favoring applicants based on their religion, which is a protected status, is illegal. So you can't do that. And he says, well, it'd be the same as if we said, most people at Rusk ISD prefer country music, which is a really ridiculous comparison. That was his actual response to the FFRF when he got one of his letters from them. He had a pretty lengthy response that we can talk about at some point. But yeah, that was essentially his comparison. And the fact is that liking music is not a protected status, and religious status is. And that's where he starts to get himself into trouble.
Cindy, what do you think this guy's motivating factors are? What's keeping superintendent, because he seems single-minded to want to continue this and not let it stop. What do you think his goal really is?
Well, I feel like we've talked about this 3 times already today. It's the will to impose Christianity to everyone, whether they like it or not. And that's the essence of Christo-fascism. This specific guy doesn't seem to care about how his actions are going to be perceived or even if they're legal, because he has this self-righteous Christian mentality. And the entitlement he displays in his statements, it's just staggering. But at the same time, it feels like he's so insecure in his beliefs that he has to impose them on everyone else. And that's one of the psychological mechanisms in strongly held beliefs, whether they're religious or social or whatever. It's when you see that your beliefs don't comport to reality too much, then you start to either work on them and try to find if they are corresponding to reality, or you just double down and just go full steam ahead. And that's just what he's doing.
Eli, I know you and I have had a discussion previously with the guy praying, have your way, touch the cheerleaders, touch the principal, touch the football team. He thought it was kind of a here, hold my beer kind of scenario.
Yeah.
And, I have to say, I do find it funny. I wish I could believe you're right, because I've heard people literally say all those words combined in prayers hundreds of times, if not more. But man, it would be awesome to think he was trolled by his own student. That would almost make it worth it. But what did you have to say about it?
Yeah, just to sort of clarify for audience, the prayer that was read over the loudspeaker included, among other things, the following phrases: God, you see the football players, touch every one of them, touch the cheerleaders, touch the band members, touch the drill team right now, have your way, and we say yes to your will. We ask you to come on in this football game. And as I'm reading this, so this had been introduced as the prayer that had been clearly pre-written, which we don't disagree on that. What we disagree on is who wrote it, because in my head I'm thinking this seems like a high school student wrote this and was like a senior is like went to his friends like, watch this. I'm going to talk about sex on the school intercom before homecoming. And so he goes and writes this prayer that's like full of sexual innuendo, but just tame enough that he can get away with it. And then he goes and he does this. And I think that's hilarious. I think it'd be just like as headcanon, because it's probably not the case. It would be awesome. I think it's like 50-50. Like for me, without knowing any more details than I have, it's like a 50-50 possibility.
If I were one of those people who felt like I could choose to believe what I want to believe, I would definitely believe your side too, because it is definitely better to think he got trolled at his own event.
Yeah.
Cindy, one of the things that I noticed is he mentioned in his comments to the Freedom from Religion Foundation, I hope you enjoy your permanent vacation at the only place hotter than Texas in August. What do you think it is that makes Christians so quick to go to the "you're gonna burn in hell" line instead of trying to have an adult conversation?
Because it feels Pavlovian. It's like they have been raised with this carrot and the stick, and it's the only thing they know. And so every time they feel threatened or uncomfortable, they go back to the carrot and the stick. And it's petty, it's pathetic, but on the other hand, it's all they know. And it's... I don't know how to take it really, because when an attack on you is just so petty like this, usually I just ignore it. When I'm attacked like this, you've been attacked by Christians and maybe also Muslims because you talked about religion and you got those petty threats, and it just doesn't mean anything. They don't realize it, and that's just so sad to me.
I probably shouldn't say this, but that's probably all the more reason why I will. But if I see strong Christian-based community traditional values on the advertisement, I'd probably want the job less. Yeah. Because I would feel like that I would be walking into, it's almost like saying judgmental, closed-minded, hold my farts in tight ass, better watch it, come on in, you better match. That sounds, so maybe there is a level of truth in advertising that can do some good. But yeah. Obviously not constitutional, because but the sad part is that I do think that there's not a lot to take it away when he makes decisions on hiring, or he has whatever influence he has on it, to definitely go for certain styles of people. That's impossible for me to accept, especially considering some of the things we've even heard from the Supreme Court justice. But and I'm going to just open it up to you, Eli. I was wondering if not being in heaven with this guy, Burton, do you think that's not the selling point that he thinks it is?
Oh, no, of course it's not. Just like you said, like if I see, Christian faith-based values or environment or whatever it is, just like you said, like, oh, thank you for putting that, I'm going to be, seeking employment elsewhere. And no, I don't want to be around that. And that was part of what the article mentioned as well, or what Hemant Mehta had mentioned as well, is that this is going to alienate people who don't share Christian faith, not even just non-religious people, just non-Christian religious people as well, which there are plenty of. Even you don't have to be an atheist to not be a Christian, and there are plenty of non-Christians in Texas. And I really like the way Hemant Mehta put it, just because a group, it's still unconstitutional, no matter how many people want to do it. Like if it's unconstitutional, that doesn't change. So when a student comes to the superintendent and says, like, I would like to do this, and I went and I talked to everybody that would be affected, and they have signed this petition to say that, they are okay with me doing this, they wouldn't be offended, and it's okay for me to do this. So it's okay now, right? It's his job as an educator to say, say, hey, look, I completely admire, appreciate, and respect the effort you went into organizing for something that you care about. Continue doing that because that will matter so much in your life. Now, here's the thing. When one person wants to violate the Constitution, it's called a crime. When a group of people want to violate the Constitution, I mean, it depends. If you work for the federal government, you just call it work. If you don't work for the federal government, you call it terrorism. Are you a federal employee or a terrorist? And then that person knows that they can't do that just because everybody wants to violate the Constitution. And that it ties into the same thing with the Facebook post, why that's not like the number of things that the FFRF has come to him and been, hey, here's the exact reason that you can't do this. And he responds just with, well, you know, I know the law and I'm going to keep doing it.
I noticed that more than once. He did. Don't think I'm a dummy. I know what I'm doing. I know the law. I'm interpreting it. And then he would pretty much blatantly say something that was like, you really probably shouldn't even say that. But with that in mind, I think you're right. We could sit down and have a vote on it and officially vote in the whole county and say, you know what? We're cool with this. That doesn't supersede the Constitution. The Constitution's still there. And so you don't get to toss it aside and do what you want. But I did find it funny that with all of this, finally he's starting to respond, and immediately it's with the threat of the, you know, you're going to hell. But it is telling to me that he would do that. Now, Cindy, do you think this ends up anyway, other than eventually at some point it makes it into a court battle, or is he going to stop before that point, or do you think something else will happen? Because at this point, he's just showing complete disregard, in my opinion, for the students' rights and for the Constitution.
I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that we talked about a very, very similar action a few years ago. I don't know if you remember, but there was the exact same issue with the Ark Encounter. While it was being built, the same restrictions on hiring people were put in place, and there was a lawsuit. And I don't remember what was the end of the lawsuit, but I guess what happened there is going to be used as precedent here. So I guess we'll see how it goes. But I don't think it will stand for very long. And I think that after that, they will try to go to the Supreme Court, because they won a similar case with that specific Supreme Court last year. We talked it again on our Prophets a couple of times with the football coach praying before the games. So yeah, I don't think it's going to stand. But with this Supreme Court, I'm not sure they're going to do anything against this.
I'm hopeful that this Supreme Court will see things and recognize that there's a big difference between a football coach kneeling on a field and a student led over the PA system prayer. It is different. And I hope they recognize that, and recognize that at some point there's a line to where we have to admit that things are unconstitutional. And this is a public school. I guess we'll see what happens with that. I can only hope that this does end up in court, because honestly, I don't see it happening any other way than in court, that this ultimately gets resolved. But Eli, did you have anything final to say?
Part of the FFRF letters to the school district, or to the superintendent specifically, indicate that, the Texas Religious Viewpoint Anti-Discrimination Act requires that if a religious message is being displayed or portrayed at a school, performed, then the act requires that the school disclaims that they do not endorse what is being said when students lead prayers, and that the prayers cannot be restricted to any particular faith. And that's exactly the opposite of what is happening at Presque ISD. For the graduation invocation to be a prayer led by a student selected by an administrator, and for the school's loudspeaker to have a Christian prayer broadcast over it, and for the school's Facebook page to have a specific religious denomination, specified, all of those things require action from faculty, from administrators, from somebody who shouldn't be making those choices. And that is where I wouldn't think that this is going to become a Supreme Court thing necessarily. I think some governing body will tell Rusk ISD, like, hey, FFRF is right on this one. Like, you have to stop doing that. You can't. Like, here are some guidelines that you can meet if you want to have similar. If you want to let students pray. You just can't encourage it or force it or implement it yourself. And that's the part where he's missing. I have confidence with FFRF's track record. I have confidence that that's where it'll go.
I definitely, if it goes that route and they just stop, I guess first and foremost, that is without a doubt the most important thing, to be reminded that you can't just continue with impunity to do what you want in schools just because you're the superintendent. And that's important, because it's not like we can say you can't be a superintendent because you have a strong Christian viewpoint. That would be just as terrible. So it's finding that balance, but I can assure you this isn't it. Cindy, I was wondering real quick there, was there anything else you were looking to add?
Yes, I'm going to do some fact checking on myself right now on live, because while we were talking, I did some digging, and the case I mentioned with the ARC encounter, it's a bit different because it was about tax subsidies. And I'm not going too much into details, but I think the two cases have nothing in common legally. And so forget what I said earlier. Just we needed to correct that.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Now, understand this, because that actually is a good story about what Cindy's talking about. I know that exact one. So I'll be putting a little window up on the top where you'll be able to see it, to go view that. If you want to hear more about the nonprofits, click down below.